I'm Roberto Castro, and this is the Course Record Show. The trends, technology, and strategy driving the business of golf. Welcome back to the Course Record Show. Today we have a quick nine with Jimmy Roberts, who absolutely needs no introduction, so we will jump right into it. Jimmy, good to see you.
Roberto, I'm not really sure I've ever been a part of anything that refers to a course record before, but nonetheless, it's good to be with you.
You know, this name came out 3 or 4 course records ago for me. Mine have all fallen by the wayside, as all records do in all sports. So, see you later.
Yeah, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Because it's what I do. So, the old kind of conventional wisdom is that if you're a PGA Tour pro, if you're a skilled professional, and you show up at a course, it's not polite to set a course record, right?
I think
Am I that
that's
wrong?
I think that's good etiquette is the right word. Famously near me in Atlanta at Highlands Country Club in Highlands, North Carolina, Bobby Jones had the course record there, like a 63 for 90 or years or something. And I've actually never played there, but it's a short little mountain golf course, right? And I think not only a tour player could shoot a crazy low score, but a handful of good amateur players could as well. And I've heard it's the most glaring example of like you don't break the course record at Highlands Country Club, no matter who you are. So
I
that's
get
a
that.
great question.
Okay.
So let's jump into the business of sports.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, illustrious media career. So let's start there. What's different about the media industry of today compared to when you came up through ESPN and NBC, et cetera?
Well, you're looking at it. I mean, this is a set that we built in my home,
Yeah.
some extra space that we had. When I started, and actually I started long before NBC and ESPN, I started in the industry on the other side of the camera in production at ABC Sports, which doesn't even exist any longer. But I mean, I remember when I first started to produce a feature, you would need, first of all, for somebody to record the video, you'd need a crew of 3 people and all this bulky, heavy equipment. And then you'd go into an editing room that, is bigger than my studio. Now, both of those things can be accomplished using a phone and a laptop.
Right.
And, people do it at home all the time. That's one of the really, really big differences. The other really big difference is the number of outlets for, your content. Um, when I was growing up, there was ABC, CBS, and NBC, and then there were a couple of independent stations, local stations. Now it's not only about television, but it's about streaming services and, apps on your phone and podcasts, and everybody's in competition for attention. And it's not just with other kind of like products. So the media landscape it's like all the trees were cleared away and the horizon just seems endless. So I think that's the biggest difference. It was a kind of clearly, closely defined space when I started,
Yeah.
but not so much anymore. And it's almost like anything goes.
So let me ask you this. It's easy to pontificate, but I'll ask you a pointed question. If you had a son or daughter that was wanted to make a career of this, is it a better time to try to make a living in media and sports media today with that abundance of distribution, but that competition for attention, or in a previous era where it was a lot more concentrated, a lot less, jobs that paid, but when you got one, it was very clear and it was, could be very lucrative, or it was more concentrated, but also, more structured.
It's a really good question, and very well put, I should say. So, first of all, I have 3 sons,
Okay.
and 2 of them are in the media business and in the sports media business. I have one who works for the NHL. He never had any intention of being in front of a camera, but he's in production, which is how I started my career.
Yep.
And then I have my oldest son was a local sports broadcaster for 5 years and gave it up and now works for our local golf association making content, the MGA.
Wow.
Um, I think that that's, as I said, a really interesting question because there are many more opportunities now, but you have to kind of fight and claw and scratch to make them make sense. I mean, I remember my starting salary, and I don't want to tell you how long ago it was $14,995, and I lived like a prince.
Right.
You know, had my own apartment in New York City, and it was felt like it was an elite job because there just weren't many jobs like it around. You know, if I were to go someplace and say I work for ABC Sports, it would open doors. Now you're just one of many. You're just a person with a camera, you know, with a platform. And that's fine
Yeah.
because ultimately it really should be about the quality of your product. My oldest son, who was the sports broadcaster, I think he recognized that. He saw that the future of the industry was not something that was going to be very hospitable down the road.
Right.
And it was trending in the wrong direction. And he wanted to do something else. He loved sports, always has, was a good athlete, and wanted to stay connected to sports and connected to storytelling and media. And he just was smart enough to say, I'm going to do something different. I'm just going to pivot. And I think that people, I don't know exactly what the number is, but the research shows you that most people will make, you know, I think between 5 and 6, 7 career pivots, certainly job pivots in their life.
Sure.
I was kind of an exception just because I grew up in a different time. I have only worked before I started this company where we're now focused on the business of golf. I only had 3 employers,
Right.
you know, as an adult: ABC Sports, ESPN, and NBC Sports and Golf Channel. And I still work for NBC Sports and Golf Channel, but this is what I spend most of my time doing, which is kind of telling stories in a different way. And it's been a lot of fun, but it's I'm telling you, you got to be on your toes and you just kind of have to be aware of how quickly the ground is shifting underneath all of our feet.
Yeah. So about that, Big Swing Media, the company that you founded, um, why was now the time? Was it just something you'd been wanting to do? Were you seeing that broader shift happen? You obviously have an incredibly strong name and strong brand, and maybe even the industry allowed you to do that, right? If you would have taken something 10, 20 years ago to your employer and said, I'm going to do this to the side, they would have said, no, you're not. And now it's a very different world. What were the big reasons?
Well, first of all, the monoliths are risk averse. So while they might recognize this could have some merit,
Yeah,
it's not unlike a lot of, I'm sorry for using a double negative, it's not unlike a lot of other big businesses. I've written a couple of books and I was fortunate to have gotten them published by big publishing houses. But one of the things that I learned along the way, I wrote another book that has yet to be published. It's a novel. And somebody pointed out to me that John Grisham got turned down by 40 publishing houses when he submitted his first manuscript for Time to Kill. One of my favorite books was Confederacy of Dunces.
great book.
And Confederacy of Dunces was turned down for publication to the point where the author, John Kennedy Toole, right? He was so despondent, he committed suicide. His mother took the manuscript and had it published, and it won a Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah,
The point is that so many of these people who make decisions, it's easier for them to say no because they don't want to risk failing rather than, you know, they could pass up something that could be successful and then they haven't so much made a mistake.
right.
History is filled with examples of, I mean, would you like to have been the junior associate who turned down the John Grisham script,
Right.
you know, manuscript? But I think that the people he worked for had clearly set a tone that better to do that than make a decision to do something where we lose a lot of money. So I'm not saying that people turned down this project. We didn't, this was our project. Myself and my partner is a guy named Fred Bucher, and he's a longtime sales and marketing executive with ESPN and the Weather Channel. But what really seemed appealing about this to me was, you know that there are 5 million podcasts out there, okay? So
Right.
we've got a lot of company. But the point is that a lot of them, most of them, probably don't get much traffic.
Right.
Why is that? I don't necessarily think that that's because of the quality of the podcast. It's not, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's about doing what's, it's doing, creating the product is only part of the assignment. I think the thing that has been so illuminating to me is that without Fred and the business side of this,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know what to do. But he's every day connecting with people to monetize what we're doing, selling advertising, creating opportunities. You know, we've now got a newsletter, a subscription-based newsletter. The business is growing. And it doesn't happen if I just put myself in front of a camera. I
Sure.
just don't think there are enough people who care. I mean, sure, I'm sure there are a bunch of people who will know my name and maybe plenty of people would be familiar with my work, but that's really only half of what's necessary and maybe not even half. So there's that. But what got me, to kind of back up for a second, what got me interested in this was we had kind of batted around some ideas for creating a business entity, and we weren't really sure what the topic would be. And I stumbled on this really odd fact, which was that there are more golf courses in the United States than there are McDonald's restaurants. And everybody who I mentioned that to, maybe 99% of the people that I mention it to, have the same reaction, which is, no, that can't be right. Is that
Right.
possible? But what it points out is the fact that golf is just growing by leaps and bounds in so many different ways. It's a $250 billion a year business in terms of economic impact. A third of the people in this country, 125 million, maybe more, are what they call engaged. And this is according to the National Golf Foundation. That means they either play, watch, read about, or are interested in golf. It touches so many different, areas of business, travel, media, technology, manufacturing, course operations, fashion, just so many different things. And the people have interesting stories.
Yeah, it touches all parts of the economy. I'm in the technology space with CapTech, and we have a strong golf practice. And I can't tell you how many times we've, sat around and said, like, well, we're going to reach the outer bounds of what we can do in golf. And it has not been true yet, right? There's
Interesting.
always another business related to golf, whether it's a multi-course operator, it's an OEM, or it's a hospitality business, or it's, TGL is a big example, but there is so many different pieces to the industry. Youth golf, apparel, and fashion. It's really even just the technology side of those pieces uh, can continue to sustain and bring new business challenges and just new conversations, which is really interesting. When you
Yeah.
talk about golf and how it relates to media, what do you find differentiated about it compared to whether it's reality TV or basketball, or is it the affluent customer? Is it the passion that people have for golf? Like, what do you think has made it work over all these years? Because you see, the Masters is like our Super Bowl, and it's the biggest and most televised event, and it kind of does the numbers that second round NCAA basketball tournament does, or something like that. Don't quote me exactly, but it's always shocking that golf is small in a media world, but it has an outsized profile. Why is that?
Well, a couple things. First of all, it's a niche sport.
Yeah.
There's just no doubt about it. But that said, there aren't very many sports that people watch and they also
And
play.
they play. Yeah.
And their passion for both, you know, I think one feeds the other.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it again, the demographic. I mean, it's very, very upscale. And those are two things that make it unique. Um, I think that some of the things that have happened in golf are right now, and again, stuff you may probably know, but more people play golf in the United States or experience golf in the United States off the course than on the
Right.
course, which
Yeah.
means, not on a golf course. They're in a Top Golf or at Five Iron Golf or someplace like that. It's appealing to a constituency that it never had before. And you can probably credit Tiger Woods with sparking a lot of interest. But the game has changed and the game is changing. The biggest growing segment is young women,
Yeah.
and I see it all the time. My wife, she didn't play golf, and a couple of years ago, she took it up. And I wouldn't say she's obsessed, but I do know some of her friends who are.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't something that you saw 10, 20, 30 years ago. Sure, there were women playing.
Yeah.
But now there are programs for young women that are tailor-made for young women. I don't have to tell you, it's a very intimidating game. And to come to it late in life, somehow it just seems that men are made to feel more comfortable or less intimidated. And it has never been the most hospitable game for women to approach as adults. I think some of that's changing, and I think some of that's responsible for the growth. It's kids now. There are
Yeah.
things like PGA Junior League, Drive, Chip, and Putt, um, First Tee. They're trying their hardest to grow the game. It's expensive. It's still an expensive game,
Yeah.
but it's growing.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I'm deep into the off-course space, not just with the obvious with TGL, and even in my day-to-day, I'm a new member of a Back Nine golf facility, which is a franchise around golf simulators. There's one right near my house that my friend is the owner of, and I've joined solely to try to get my 8 and 10-year-old girls into golf.
That's
And
great.
it's fun. They love going to play the tic-tac-toe. It's always 70 degrees in there. There's no thunderstorms, there's no heat, there's no bugs, and it's 5 minutes from our house. And I think it's an incredibly accessible on ramp. So it's an experiment in progress. Check back in 6 or 12 months. But they've been around golf and they've played a little bit, but I'm just trying to get the, hey, do y'all want to go to back nine to be a yes more often than do you want to go to the golf course? Let's get sunscreen. Is it going to storm? Is it cold? Is it hot? I'm just trying to get the yes more often. Let's go back to the attention economy. We touched on it in closing here. You're 30 episodes, a year plus into the big swing. You've also had some guests that are in this world, right? You had Grant Horvat. You've had some people that are in the media business and, that also know what surprised you. Like, what are you seeing work in this new economy? What are you and Fred getting traction with? What are you seeing from your guests that's working? Like, what have you learned, let's say, a year into this, being both feet into this new world?
I think one of the things that I'm learning is that it's not as simple in terms of, you mentioned the attention economy. We talk about discoverability. So
Okay.
the idea is, what can we do to drive people to our product, to our show? We air Tuesday mornings on Golf Channel a couple of times, sometimes three times, 7 a.m., 9 a.m., and sometimes at 11. But that really is a vehicle, hopefully, aside from producing what we think is a good show,
Yeah.
that's a vehicle to hopefully drive people to YouTube to find us, where that same episode will be available starting on Wednesdays, because that's where we feel we can have the greatest platform. And in fact, so we had Paige Sporanic last week.
Yeah.
And so she was interesting. I didn't really know her very well, but I really found her story very interesting. But 10,000 people watched that. If you look at the numbers, we've had some great episodes. Jack Nicklaus, I don't know what that's up to. I can't quote the numbers, but we've had a few episodes that have been wildly successful, at least for us.
Yeah.
And what I'm learning is about how to make that happen. And it's not as simple as just doing a show, creating some buzz. It's about navigating all the different social platforms to bring this in front of people. It's it's alchemy.
Yeah.
It's not in some cases it's good fortune, but there's a strategy to this.
Sure.
It's, if not science, it's closer to a science than it is to an art.
Yeah.
So I'm learning about all the things that I don't know about how that works. Honestly, I got the easiest part in this company. All I've got to do is talk to people.
Sure.
And I'm just a curious person. I like to say that when I was a kid, I used to get in trouble for telling stories. Now I get paid for it.
Yeah.
It's, I get a chance to do what I like to do. And I kind of feel like I'm surrounded by these hardworking people who are figuring out how to steer the battleship, you know, and I'm just up on the poop deck taking in the scenery. So,
Well, I think that is not so different than legacy media and just getting a little bit of a glimpse of it, through recently for me doing a couple things. But when I played, I got a little bit of a peek of what it takes to televise golf, and um, there's so much that happens behind Jim Nance and Trevor, right?
yep.
Behind you and Rich Lerner, and behind, like, the production piece is a massive part of it, right? The
Yeah.
executive producers, the sales and marketing folks, like, there really is. I mean, my gosh, if the iceberg is like barely sticking out of the water when it comes to
It's a good
television,
analogy.
and there's a massive ice block underneath the water. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating industry.
Yeah. So one of the things in my background was those 8 years that I was on the other side of the camera.
Yeah.
I started for 4 years at ABC Sports. Then I went to work for 2 years for ABC News, and then another 2 years for back at ABC Sports. But during that time, one of the jobs that I had was actually being an associate producer on the golf telecasts that were hosted by Jim McKay and Dave Marr, and Bob
Wow.
Rosberg was on the call. And so I learned actually let's see, 1983 US Open, Larry Nelson at Oakmont. I produced the B unit. The 1983 PGA Championship at Riviera. I think I've got the years right.
Awesome.
I produced the B unit. Hal Sutton beating Jack Nicklaus. So I really, and this benefited me, by the way, I had an understanding
Yeah.
that what was going on the other side of the camera. And that helped me a lot when I went in front of the camera. And I often say this, people don't understand the mayhem that is going on in Jim Nance's ears,
Yeah.
in Dan Hicks's ears. These guys are incredible. And because they have such a talent, because they make it look so easy. And it's not that easy,
No.
but you can't make them stumble and fall. And believe me, I've stumbled and fell. I understand how difficult this is. And I marvel at guys like that. Those two guys, Dan and Jim, they're remarkable
Yeah.
because they make it look easy and it's not.
Yeah. It's a savant-like talent. It really is. Well, Jimmy Roberts, thanks a million for being on the Course Record Show. We have last maybe 10 or 12 episodes, we've gone to a quick 9 format. You sneak out after work, you
Love
try to
it.
you maybe get it in a shorter format, make it consumable on the way to the office or on the way to the golf course, hopefully. I could sit around and talk to you for 2 or 3 hours. Maybe we do a 36-hole day format one day. I think that's called the Acquired Podcast, which I can't make it through one of those. So we'll stick to our format, but thanks a million.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun, Roberto. Glad to join you anytime.